I don't have anything too clever or profound to speak on right now. I'm really just still reeling from the experience that was Howard the Duck. For those of you who have not seen the Howard the Duck movie, good news, you don't have to. The homie Oz and myself covered it here on this very podcast just a few short days ago. So it should be very recently in the podcast catalog here. If you guys want to check that out, I highly recommend you check that out. Even if you have not seen the movie, that was it was a phenomenal experience. Not all great experiences are necessarily enjoyable, but I tell you what, all podcast experiences are more or less. You ever see a movie so bad that it just kind of alters you? Like it's almost like what Howard the Duck movie did to me. It was kind of like you eat a type of food, right? And as soon as like the food touches your taste buds, you know that okay, whatever this dish is clearly not for me. Like this ain't it, right? But for some reason, you go for another bite because you're like, surely whatever I just put in my mouth wasn't that bad, and so you try it again. I realize now that maybe I'm just kind of not well mentally put together because normal people probably don't do that. So never mind, scratch that analogy. But anyway, that's what Howard the Duck did for me. After seeing that atrocious movie, spoiler alert, is bad. It's very bad. But after watching that movie, I was like, man, I kind of have the hankering to go back and to read a little bit more Howard the Duck comics. Just to get more of a glimpse as to who this character really is, because I really only have a surface level understanding of Howard the Duck and like what this character really is all about. And so I may or may not have purchased a Howard the Duck book. He only I think he currently only has like one actual omnibus, which probably shouldn't even be called an omnibus. It's a very small book. But anyways, Howard the Duck is a very small person, so it makes sense. Anywho, homies, I've already told myself I would not keep this long. It is just me right now rolling solo dolo. And I really just wanted to hop on really quick to give you guys an update. But before I do that, I still have to do things properly. So let me bring this thing in the right way. Homies, one and all, welcome back to another episode of the Superhero Homies podcast. My name is Quentin, and I am who you have today. This is it. It is just me. But as you guys can tell from the title of this episode, unless you guys are so dedicated, you just click on the new episode without even looking to see what it is. Shout out to you guys, y'all the real ones. But this episode today is it's actually just going to be a brief episode, giving you guys an update on the podcast and being transparent with all of you and letting you guys know what's going on, things to come. Uh, what is going to happen here with the podcast? Will there be any significant changes? Anything that will affect your guys' regular listening? And the answer to all those questions are, well, maybe, depends. We'll see. But no, so yeah, just to kind of talk here a little bit about some things here. Uh, First and foremost, I wanted to let you guys know that, yeah, moving forward here, there will be a greater emphasis on uh, comic books. It sounds kind of weird when I say it like that, so let me rephrase this again. There will be a greater emphasis on covering books regularly. I remember when the podcast first started, I really wanted to make sure that like regularly we had the opportunity to read and thoroughly discuss certain comic books, whether it be ones that were relevant or ones that we just thought were really cool. And just because of life and other excuses that don't really matter, I've kind of let that get away from me, which is weird because I never stopped reading or collecting, just stopped discussing as thoroughly as I should. And so that's going to change. So moving forward here, yeah, at least one book a month. I really want to get the chance to discuss and break down. Now, some of you may be wondering why I just limit it to one book a month. That, my good friend, is a very good question, and I am more than willing to answer that. That is because for me to read just a single comic book takes a lot of time. You see, for one thing, I am not a fast reader. And a second thing is that whenever I get to reading something, especially if it's good, or if I have any kind of questions, or if anything comes to mind, I'm the type of person to pause what I'm currently reading and go reference another book, pull that book open, and then get more information about what's currently going on the book that I'm supposed to be reading. And so something that would take a normal person with a functioning human brain a day or two to read could end up taking me like a week or longer, which does kind of lead me right into the next thing I wanted to talk about here really briefly, and that is what books will be discussed. Well, again, just like when the podcast first started, I wanted to keep it on things that were prevalent and or cool. So, All Star Superman is definitely one that is on my list. Actually, that's the one that I'm currently reading, and yeah, I really wanted to discuss this one. I haven't read All Star Superman since I think it may have been back in 2009. Is that when I first read it? Because I was actually living up in New York at the time, and I thoroughly remember enjoying the book back then, and I haven't read it in this entirety since then. And I'd really rather not think about how long ago that's been because I'm not interested in making myself feel older than maybe I already am. So we're gonna move on from that part of the discussion. But yeah, for those of you who aren't familiar or who haven't heard, All Star Superman, at least to some varying degree, will be kind of the inspiration for the James Gunn Superman movie coming out, I believe, in 2025, somewhere around there. Now, it is going to be interesting to see exactly what elements of All Star Superman James Gunn wants to adapt. But it is interesting, though, that this is a book that's written by one of my favorite comic book writers, Grant Morrison. And this really isn't the only work written by Grant Morrison that James Gunn is looking to adapt, as I believe Caleb and I spoke about a couple weeks ago here. The Grant Morrison Batman run that takes place just prior to the New 52 era. That era of Batman, to a degree, is also seemingly being adapted in the movie called Brave and the Bold, which we will see our first true incarnation of a live action on big screen Batman and Robin since the Joel Schumacher movies. And so that should be interesting as well, just because Grant Morrison, he's a very how do I put this? He's a very weird kind of writer, and he has a lot of tendencies to do things that maybe other writers maybe wouldn't want to lean towards. And again, I'm a huge fan of Grant Morrison, but sometimes I do understand why certain elements of his work rub people the wrong way. But there's a lot more books I want to discuss, and that's just really like the first quarter of the year. And like I said, it's probably going to end up being more than just one book a month that's covered. But in terms of like comic book stories, yeah, there's quite a few right off bat that I want to discuss. I also said a few weeks ago that I wanted to start discussing comic books that weren't just the ones that I thoroughly love, but also the ones that I either do not like or ones that are just universally panned. So I have a few of those as well that I'm really looking forward to discussing. I now go ahead and tell you guys this. One of those, ironically, is All Star Batman and Robin. All Star Batman and Robin. This is a story that I've spoken around several times in the podcast, but I've never directly sat down and explained the ins and outs of the story and discussed why this book is so has been so badly received. I mean, this book had all the hype in the world going around it. It was written by Frank Miller. I mean, one of the most iconic comic book writers of all time. I mean, the man practically reinvented Daredevil when the Daredevil book was on the verge of being canceled back in the 80s, there in the early 80s. And then Later on in the 80s, he would go on to do some amazing work for Batman, including Batman Year One, and prior to that, The Dark Knight Returns. And, he had, not to go ahead and to podcast about the podcast here, but, Frank had some, I don't know, he had some issues there for a while where, like, he couldn't find that spark. But this is something that happens to seemingly every comic book writer at some point, right? Like, there's always going to be the time where a comic book writer just doesn't really seem to have that same kind of edge that they once did. And maybe it's because so many of these comic book writers churn out so many books so frequently. I don't know. Maybe they get burned out. Maybe they ran out of ideas, or maybe the times just passed them by. I'm not saying that's what happened to Frank, but I'm saying this is a likely scenario that something similar happened with him. But the artwork here is actually done by Jim Lee. And of course, Jim Lee is, in my opinion, one of the greatest comic book artists to ever do it. And a lot of people feel that way. And so you have this, no pun intended, you have this all star team of Frank Miller and Jim Lee. And the book was delayed several times from issue to issue. And actually, the story was never even finished. DC, after a while, they just kind of, they just dropped it. But I think we have maybe 6 to 8 issues of it, maybe a little bit more. I'm not quite certain on the number. But I actually have that book sitting on my shelf, and I really do look forward to delving into this book, reading it through for its entirety, and to see if it really is as bad as they say. But in terms of like the bad books I want to discuss, and again, these are just some of the things that are planned here, not all. My goodness, if I could plan out an entire year, hell, if I could plan out an entire month in one sitting, that would be phenomenal. But anyways, Spider-Man: One More Day. This has got to be one of the most infamous Spider-Man stories ever, and maybe for now, the less said about that one, the better. But let's just say I really also cannot wait to hear what you guys think about this story, and to see if this story really is as bad as they say it is. Again, this is a story that man, I don't recall reading the story in its entirety. This is during the J. Michael Straczynski era of Spider-Man, and the ironic thing is that it takes place at the end of Straczynski's Spider-Man run, and I think that he has again, no pun intended, he has an amazing Spider-Man run. Okay, that pun was a little bit intended. But no, seriously though, J. Michael Straczynski has I think he has a really powerful Spider-Man run, and in this kind of somewhat modern era of Spider-Man, it's the best. I think it's way better than Dan Slott's Spider-Man. I'm not that big a fan of Dan Slott. I realize that to some of you, I might as well be speaking Chinese right now in terms of like these names and references or whatnot, but just stick with me here. The crazy thing though is that the whole idea behind the One More Day story arc here is that Aunt May is dying, and Peter has seemingly exhausted all of the means possible to him to save Aunt May's life, and he ends up, well, you guessed it, he ends up making a deal with the devil, Mephisto himself. And what does Mephisto want in return for saving Aunt May? He says, I will save Aunt May's life, but I want your marriage. So he wants to it's kind of siphon the love and the marriage between Peter and Mary Jane, and basically make so that those two are kind of perfect strangers to a degree. And so like they get one more day together. It was supposed to. Okay, so I think that J. Michael Straczynski did the best he could with that premise, It wasn't his idea. It was Joe Quesada's. Ultimately, that was his call. Joe Quesada. He was the editor in chief at Marvel at the time, and he and I guess the other higher ups at Marvel really wanted to do something different with Peter and Mary Jane, and a lot of the fans thought that this was just a terrible idea to split those two up. You just can't do it. It would be like splitting up Lois and Clark. It would be like splitting up Reed and Sue. If you want to do like a mini story arc where they maybe break up for a little bit and get back together, that's one thing. But you can't do something like this forever. And yeah, it just wasn't a good call. So yeah, I look forward to discussing that as well and seeing if it really is as bad as a lot of people say it is. We'll see. But I'm not just going to be discussing bad comic books. I already said All Star Superman is going to be the first one that I do here. Another one that I'm going to do, I don't know if I'm going to do this. I'm probably going to save this one, honestly, for later on in the year. But I'm finally going to do a full review of Daredevil Born Again, the comic book, not to be confused with the TV show on Disney Plus coming out sometime next year. But because of that TV show, I figure why not? Why not go ahead and sit down and actually do a full, fleshed out review of one of the books that really put Frank on the map, if you ask me, and that is Daredevil Born Again. There's two quintessential. Well, there's more than two, but like in terms of like solo books that you can read for Frank Miller's Daredevil, there's The Man Without Fear, and then there's Born Again. Then I think that both of those are just like cream of the crop. You really need to read. But Frank Miller's Daredevil run in this entirety, I think you need to read, and then Bendis's run, and then Brubaker's run, and then you can kind of read whatever. But anyways, so those are just a few of the comic books I had in mind. I will mention one more tentatively, and that is because I may shelve this one or I may change this one around. This is the only one that's not a for certain. But Guardians of the Galaxy. I want to discuss a Guardians of the Galaxy comic book. And I want to do it before the movie comes out. And I kind of just wanted to have fun with this one. Just kind of go off the tone or the vibe of the movie. I don't think that the movie is adapting any specific story arc or anything like that, so I can't like do a one for one comparison to any kind of famous Guardian story from the comics. But this does seem to maybe draw a little bit from Jerry Dugan's Guardians of the Galaxy run. And I mean, yeah. So there's just a few things from there. Like Rocket gets sick during that story arc, but it's kind of a bizarre situation with this comic book because the Jerry Dugan Guardians run takes place well into the existence of the MCU. In other words, this is a comic book that tries heavily to feel like the movie, which obviously the movie takes a lot of its cues from the comic books. So it's kind of a weird thing where the source material begins to imitate something that has taken its inspiration from the source material. I don't know. It's a weird kind of confusing scenario here. But the reason why I'm up in the air about this is because I like Jerry Dugan. I don't think that I don't think that he's like anything like revolutionary or incredible, but I also don't think that I don't think that he's awful either. Like I think that he is he's a good hand. He's solid. But that's the only one that I'm up in the air about. I may decide to go with a different Guardians book. There are plenty of good modern Guardian story, with this kind of team up that we have here. So we'll see what I do with that one. But there's a little bit more here that I wanted to discuss with you guys here. I wanted to also discuss Patreon here for a little bit, and that is Patreon is now going to be heavily revamped. In so much that I'm going to start putting out one Patreon episode a week. So now the Patreon event will not be a weekly scenario. The only times where this will possibly not apply would be when I'm pulling double or maybe triple duty on the main podcast page when like a movie comes out. So if like for example, Shazam 2 Fury of the Gods comes out, that week I'll be already doing two podcasts. I don't know if I will have time to do a Patreon on weeks like that. But on essentially every other week, I will be doing a Patreon episode. Now, what would these be about? So these will be mostly movie focused until like a really cool TV show comes out, and then I'll definitely do that. But essentially, yeah, this will be movie focused. There will be a lot of new movies, but when there's no interesting new movies, I will be going back to the old ones, to movies that I either haven't seen in a while or just haven't flat out seen. Period. And so I'm really really looking forward to kind of digging into this and to looking into like movies from the past that. Okay, so let me put it this way. I've referenced RoboCop maybe 7,859 times on this podcast, but I've never actually sat down and reviewed the goddamn movie here. And so that will, for example, be one. Same thing with like Alien. Same thing with Terminator. Same thing with like Godfather or any of Francis Ford Coppola's films like Apocalypse Now. Maybe not that. That's almost Snyder cut length. But so that's kind of what I'm going to be doing here with the Patreon page. And the cool thing is, like I said, yes, this does start immediately. Beginning tomorrow, actually, will be the first Patreon of the revamped page. And so with that, I'll be doing a review on Cocaine Bear. And I got to be honest, I can't think of a better way to kick off the new season of Patreon content than by talking about a bear who is high as giraffe titties on cocaine. That just sounds like a good ass time. And plus, I already looked at the runtime for the movie. The movie is about an hour and 34 minutes. So just like, I don't know, like how long does like a shit ton of cocaine stay in your system? Like how long does it keep you high? Is it about that length? Are we only watching this movie for as long as the bear is high? I don't know, but yeah, this one, I don't know, man. I gotta be honest with Cocaine Bear here. I don't know if I have it in me. No matter how good or bad this movie is, I don't know if I can give it anything lower than like an 8. How do you poorly rank or review a movie about a bear high as pterodactyl balls on cocaine? I don't understand it. You have to explain to me how you would take something, a premise so solid like that, and give it a poor review. But Cocaine Bear is not going to be the only movie I'm reviewing. Obviously, like I said, going to be doing one a week here. But there's another new movie coming out next week that I'm also really looking forward to reviewing, and that is Creed 3. Unfortunately, I wanted to actually review or re-review the first two Creed movies before the third one comes out. But due to time constraints, that may not be able to happen. But even still, I am really looking forward to doing Creed 3. I'm a huge fan of the Rocky franchise, and I want to see what Michael B. Jordan does behind the directorial chair, see if he has the chops for that. So, yeah, that should be a lot of fun. And then in a couple weeks, as far as new movies go, I'll be doing the movie 65. That's for those of you who are wondering what in the goddamn hell is 65. That's this movie with Adam Driver, and I guess we're continuing down the so far successful trope of kind of some kind of veteran in this field protecting a young child in a foreign environment. We're doing that thing again, but this time it is in space and with dinosaurs. So either this movie is going to be the greatest thing ever, or it is going to be horrendous. Either way, I can't wait to see it. It sounds like a good time. If not a good time viewing wise, a good time podcasting wise, and telling all of you why this movie is ass. Either way, I'm gonna have fun with that. Uh, and then I think in April, maybe April 6th, that's when the new Mario movie comes out. The ones that you guys are clamoring about, the one that you guys love that has Chris Pratt in it as Mario. You guys love that, right? Chris Pratt voicing Mario. I know you guys said you love that. Yes, I will be reviewing the Mario movie, but before I do that, I need to do an OG review for the original Super Mario Brothers movie. So yeah, I got to make that happen. Have to make that happen. And so yeah, those are just kind of some of the things coming to the Patreon page here in just the next couple of weeks here. And don't worry, guys. The amount of Patreon content will not affect the amount of content that I do on the main homies page. We'll continue to keep that content flowing. I mean, so regardless, I'm going to consistently be putting out 2 to 3 episodes a week between the Patreon page and the main superhero homies page. By the way, if you guys want that Patreon content, it is patreon.com/superhero homies. That has the link to all of our Patreon content. A lot of really really cool stuff there. And also, there are 2 tiers to the Patreon content as well. And the cool thing here is about this is that is you will not be missing out on anything concerning superhero content if you guys don't want the Patreon. So that is that's not a concern one bit. So yeah, but for $1 to $3 a month, you guys can continue to support me and help me to fund my bad habits, and that's always greatly appreciated. There were a few more pieces of content here that I wanted to discuss here. One of those is the Homies Award, and why am I talking about the Homies Award in February? That is because the Homies Award in times past has been delegated and decided upon by the mysterious Homies Committee, which may or may not have just been Kevin and myself. We don't know. Who knows who the Homie Committee was? But anyway, those guys in the past have been the ones to decide which movies win what awards. But now that power has been relinquished and given to all of you. And I said that I was going to plug this sporadically throughout the year to remind you guys and myself about this. So, as we near the end of the year, I will be putting up polls, and I will be asking you guys to send me also your votes for certain categories that I will make present, and looking forward to seeing what you guys think will be the movie of the year. We'll have the best special effects, best action, best comedy, best lead actor, best protagonist, best antagonist, things of that nature. The categories will be made known to you guys as we get nearer to that time frame, but we still have a long time to go, and we've only seen one superhero movie this year so far, and that is Ant-Man 3. By the way, if you guys have not heard the Ant-Man 3 review that I had the pleasure of doing with the homie Caleb and the homie Joe, I highly recommend you guys check that out. That was also hella fun to do. Shout out to those two homies. Uh, let's see, what else do I have here? Oh yeah, I guess just one more thing about the Homies Award, yeah, and that is yeah. So the Homies Award this year will completely live and die on you guys getting in your votes to myself. So the way you do that will be through either DMing, messaging, or emailing. And you guys can email me at superherohomies@gmail.com. You guys can DM me through either Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. And those would be the best ways to get your submissions in. But also, as we get closer to the end of the year, I'm going to put up some polls as well. I just want to make sure that I have all bases covered so that everybody who wants to vote to see who wins what gets the opportunity to do so. Another thing here that I wanted to talk about here is is a new formatting for the podcast in terms of ways that this will be distributed, and that is video formats. This is something that I blatantly stole from the homie Caleb at Entertainment Evolved. He himself has recently started filming or recording visually his episodes, and they've been tremendous here. And admittedly, this is something that I was toying around with at the end of last year. And there's a lot of work I have to do before I can make that a real prevalent thing. But well before the end of the year, I'm hoping to have that up and going already. So I just want to go ahead and let you guys know that if you were interested in seeing what I look like on a more regular basis, for whatever weird reasons, you guys will have the opportunity to do so. And to kind of see a little bit about what is going on here behind the scenes at the Superhero Homies. So there is that as well. And one more thing here I wanted to touch on before I get the hell out of here and let you guys get on with your day. And that is the absence of the homie Kevin. I didn't just want to ignore this and have you guys wondering what in the fuck happened to Kevin. And I also didn't want to sit down here and go too deeply into something that, quite frankly, isn't my business to disclose. So I'll just keep it simple here. No, there hasn't been any kind of fallout or anything like that. So if you guys were thinking anything negative, shame on you. No, that guy's still my brother. Nothing's changed there. However, he did have to move away for a job opportunity. And so he's no longer in the area. And so because of that, he will not be able to be here frequently for recordings. He'll still have the guest spot pop in every once in a while. But in terms of being a regular co-host on the show, that unfortunately is no longer a thing. That does not mean that I will not be having co-hosts and that I'll be doing all these episodes solo. That is not the case at all. I'm actually looking forward to bringing returning guests and new guests here on the podcast as well. So there's a lot of there's gonna be a lot of cool and different changes being made this year. And that's what we have to do. We have to roll with the punches sometimes and figure out the best way to move along. So, that is kind of just a real quick recap of the podcast here and what I want to do, what some of my goals are. And, guys, I think that's going to be it for now. But like I said before, if you guys have any questions for me or any comments or gifts, threats, food, supplies, anything of the such, you guys know that you can hit me up at superherohomies@gmail.com. or any of the social media outlets. I'm like the government. I am always active and listening. All right, you can't get away from me. I'm always there. Always. Stop that. I see what you're doing. Stop it. But unless there's anything else I can think of, I think that will be all for this. And I guess there is one more thing I should discuss here really quickly. And in probably late March, maybe even starting in April, there would be yet another type of podcast here, or another type of episode format on this podcast that I'm looking forward to displaying here. I'm going to try my hand here at what's the best way to describe this? So I'm basically going to be running my own type of Dungeons and Dragons campaign, but with a Marvel comic book setting. And I have certain homies picked out already to be a part of it. It will be recorded and edited and uploaded to all of you guys to consume. And I know that's probably not going to be all of you guys' cup of tea, but I think that a lot of you will really enjoy this. I will be the The game master. I would be the ringleader of this whole thing. I would be the one orchestrating this and kind of facilitating the story. And yeah, I'll be letting the players decide or move along how they want to. But there's some cool stuff I have in the works here with that whole thing. So yeah, if you guys are not familiar with the world of Dungeons and Dragons, congratulations! You guys are about to become like 37% more nerdy because of that. So yeah, but yeah, again, that would be another bonus type of episode that I should have everything ready to go by by late March or early April. So yeah, looking forward to displaying that to all you guys. Now for realsies this time, that's all I have. But thank you guys again for your patience, and thank you guys in advance for helping facilitate the best year of growth for the podcast so far. I really think that 2023 is going to be an amazing one here for the Superhero Homies podcast, and that is because I have an amazing support system, and that is all of you amazing guys homies. So if no one is around to give you a pat on the back, do it yourself. I would come and do it in person, but that would be a lot of traveling, and I gotta like go to bed here soon. So yeah, but thank you guys again. I'll be talking to you guys again in just a few days. But until then, my name is Superhero Homie Q signing off.